Matt Alley here. This is my session 3 of my Fireside Chat podcast, the third of a 3-part session. And in the first session, if you remember, we defined the problem of the large scale project that we have going on here at our facility that includes our football complex. In session 2, we looked at budget and bids. So we got all the numbers in and went through all of those things. Now it's I'm going to title number 3 here, Get It Done, which is probably the most difficult. Well, obviously I take that back. Funding is the most difficult, and then getting people to agree is probably second most. But then getting the job done is probably going to be a big obstacle. And so here we are. We made recommendations to the board here just actually a few days back here in the week. Our board accepted a couple of the bids for the lighting and the actual bleacher project, but nothing's easy in this process. The bleacher bid got sent back because there's some additional wording and information that we have to add to that. And so in addition to that, in our lighting bid, it was missing part of the bid from a local contractor. And so we thought we had those bids all ready to go, and they get sent back. So we will send those back to the board. In addition to, we have a local contractor who we're less worried about. We wanted to get the national contractors, the guy from Minnesota and the lighting out of Iowa, want to get those on the docket. Those companies probably serve the upper Midwest, and I think as a school district, you don't want to get caught in a timeline crunch. So getting them on the calendar, our committee felt like those were the best bids to get done now through the board. Very high priced, both over $150,000 items that are getting pushed through. Again, both are Sourcewell projects, so again, it didn't have to be an open bid, but at least this can lock in them, get them here. The hassle that we're going to be up against is scheduling. We have our final track meet on April 27th, and so we're going to shoot for a May 1st start date. With that being said, that really creates some issues in our project with the timeline of getting everything done by August. August 1st would be preferential, but obviously we have till mid-August when our first football game starts. Now, if you say, hey, you started May 1st, and if the weather can hold out and a lot of the variables, hopefully you'll get the project done. The other interesting thing related to our class here is that where does some of the financing come from the budget? We looked at our capital outlay reserves, and we're sitting pretty healthy there. Now, we don't want to use those unless we have some issues along the way. And like most school districts, we're going to do this large scale project. That's going to force us to take a look at either our HVAC system or additional projects like fixing the roof. And the hope with that is that your roof doesn't leak or your HVAC doesn't go out. If one of those would happen in the midst of this project, we'd go into our reserves to try to get that done, because you have to have a roof that doesn't leak, and you need HVAC. For those of you who know the upper Midwest, between the cold winters and the humidity, you're going to have that. So if all goes well, the other thing pertaining to this class is with finance is that we're going to have to get creative on some parts of the project. We're going to have to take them out of the FY21 and then FY22 budget. So one budget goes up to June 30th, as you are very familiar, and then July 1st. In order to break up the cost and not have so many expenditures there, because again, I only gave you 2 bids for the lighting and for the bleachers that are going to be a small portion of it. We're looking at $450,000, and that is a big part of it, around the $300,000 mark. But we still got to come up with $150,000 more dollars, and we might want to break that up into 2 different budgets. And so that does get to be interesting on how you get billed for that, and we have local contractors that are helping us with some of the other parts of it. I think the next biggest obstacle, I can't keep saying that, but the next biggest obstacle is hidden costs. You go into a project and you have a budget and you want to stick to the budget, but sometimes hidden costs come out. One of the areas where we could get hit with hidden costs is we have damage to our track from frost lifting up a culvert. And that's one of those, it has to get done. And I have no clue, as I told our board, it could be 50,000, it could be 100,000, we don't know. And so again, the capital outlay reserve funds could come into play there, and hopefully we can try to limit that. One of the things that I think will be beneficial here is that our community is very supportive and wants to participate in this from the companies. We get a lot of community support. We have a couple of businesses here in town. Our booster club are all kind of coming aboard and wanting to give back to the school. That does create a little, the only complicated thing here is we just try to figure out how and what we need to buy and fund and where we can use that money. The bidding process will tie that up because the community or your booster club will want to go big on something. They don't, but they got to understand we still have some rules and regulations as a school district we need to follow. One of the things in conclusion and just thoughts is I didn't even consider the idea of getting the entire, like going out to the football complex, looking around the whole thing and getting all of what we want done. I mean, that seems like a costly thing, but something that was very interesting in this process was when some of our committee members and board members said, it's going to be a little bit confusing to our public if we go and do all this work, 450, almost $500,000 worth of work, and then we come back and we add something for 20,000, or we look at a scoreboard at a later date, and so you add a 50 to $100,000 scoreboard. They're saying let's look at getting it done now instead of coming back, and I thought that was interesting because I do understand where they're coming from, where the common person doesn't understand school budgets, they don't understand um, where the money comes from, and they want to make sure. So you want to get the job done right, and you don't want to go overboard, but then you don't want to keep coming back and having to replace other things. And so I did think that was, kind of interesting that they thought that would be a negative message if we didn't get the job done. So they did want me to consider a few more items that I was thinking might help, might hinder us with the budget, but because we have a healthy reserve and that the funding is pretty good, they're going to want us to take a look at like a score clock and some other things around the field. So when it's all said and done, I mean, I think a great follow-up video will be next August and say, hey, if I still have all my hair and it's not totally gray, maybe we'll get through this. It's kind of an interesting project for a first-year superintendent, but it's been very interesting and I'm learning a lot along the way. Thanks. This was great, 3 parts. I think it was, for me, interesting. I hope it was interesting for you. I get a little on the job training and it kind of fits with what we're doing. So looking forward to seeing everybody else's videos and have a great week.